We always had a lot of confidence in what we did. Even though we were told when we first started shopping, actually trying to get a label, we were told no, 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 just constantly kicked in the teeth, constantly never got a break. And we're like, okay, all that did was make us more resolute, and that we were going to push this thing, we were going to make it happen. We weren't going to take no for an answer.
Time to talk about one of the awesomest death metal bands of all mother Steve fucking time. We're of course talking about Morbid Angel, probably not the most consistent death metal band, but probably my personal favorite death metal band of all time. Now a lot of you are saying, what are you talking about? You're just naming a popular death metal band like Loudwire or Metal Injection. They're not that good. You better shut that fucking mouth, because I'm going to tell you why they're good. Why they do hold up. Although they have Illud, Divinum, My Anus, probably the worst album ever known to man, they still are one of the greatest, because they developed a death metal style that is completely unique to them. No matter what they do, they still had that unique brand of riff writing that's kind of dissonant, disgusting, but you could tell that they originally wrote a riff that was normal and thrashy and catchy and badass, and then they just kind of threw a sick, disgusting twist into it, making every single riff, when you pay attention to it, like, that's a money riff right there. Every single fucking time. Every single fucking time. In the early 80s, during the birth of death and thrash metal in Florida, the birthplace of death metal pretty much, and we have a band called Morbid Angel, formed by a man. This is a man, like of course the killer Cover of Nations would say, by the name of Trey Asperger's or something like that. Although his looks may be deceiving, he is the master of riffs. His soloing, as well, is, although random, technically, you wouldn't know it's random because it sounds so precise and disgusting and scary that you think, my God, this man intentionally is trying to spook the fuck out of you. But I can tell you right now, I ain't afraid of no ghosts. And he got some other fuckers that no one cares about, and they recorded a basically demo type thing that they tried to release called Abominations of Desolation, which is completely useless. Now, some of you out there that are demo debut dumbasses are going to complain, you got to talk about and give a shit about blah blah blah, devote your time to blah 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 in this fucking demo and that EP and shit, but let's be honest here. Abominations of Desolation is pretty much just the first album, Altars of Madness, and then a couple songs sprinkled here and there. Fucking pointless, unless you have to get your fix on spaghetti death metal, spaghetti western death metal specifically, and you have to hear your David Vincent on there, then you gotta get it, because some songs ended up during the Steve Buttfucker days. Eventually, we have our boy Trey pretty much sacking all the other useless fuckers, and we got an illustrious man, a beautiful enigma of a man, David Brokeback Mountain Vincent, because he's a wrangler and he's even a tangler, but he ain't no fucking mangler, that's for damn sure. This man was on bass and vocals, and although in the early days had that yeah to his voice, you know, he'd eventually developed one of the most awesome, unique death metal growls. It's completely, you know, that's David Vincent every time, just like how Morbid Angel will turn into something like that's, you know, that's Morbid Angel every time. No one copies that sound quite as well. No one really copies it at all because it's fucking impossible. People really hate this guy. He's almost like the Mel Gibson of death metal because he's crazy, but we all love his fucking ridiculousness. back in the day, he'd be so pretentious and talk about how awesome he was and stuff. Now he's doing that with a cowboy hat and big, beautiful sideburns that definitely do not look forced or horrific, and certainly do not look like those fake sideburns that SpongeBob used to wear in the old days in that good episode about Grandma's cookies. Forming the trifecta of the members that we actually give a shit about, we got a man by the name of Pete the Commando Sandoval, and he just changed the world, the dynamic of death metal drumming. He innovated the blast beats within death metal. Back in the day, you had everyone doing the thrash beats, you know. Now, Pete Commando comes in, he's like, I can do more coke than you, motherfuckers. And everyone's just blown the fuck away, you know. He's just a ridiculous blaster baiter, you know. Everyone listens to him, he's playing faster, and they think he's the master. When he gets on that drum set, he's a motherfucking ass blaster. Ridiculous. It's like his drum set's a toilet, and he just got done eating at Los Aztecas, and he's just got to fucking unload on it, and he just demolishes the toilet. The drum set toilet, you can't fix it. It's just covered in green slime. And so formed the trifecta of beautifulness that would become one of the greatest death metal bands ever, Morbid Angel. Now, although they had their demo Abominations of Desolation that was kind of sort of an album, but kind of not, it wasn't an album, essentially. So they went and recorded an album called Altars of Madness in More Sound Studio, the classic place of recording death metal, as we all know. This brings us to another thing important about Morbid Angel, is they set two trends right off the bat, even with Abominations of Desolation, kind of. That pretty much all their lyrics would focus on occult and ancient religions that kind of gets boring after a while. You don't want to hear about the Hindu god of elephants. Ooh. After a while, you kind of want to hear some, I'm like, I want to hear some songs about cowboy butt sex, and David Vincent delivers that eventually. And also you have a trend set where all the album titles start with pretty much the letters of the alphabet. But they kind of retconned Abominations of Desolation. They said that didn't exist. We're starting with Altars of Madness and get Blessed of the Sick Covenant. And then they do live albums. That kind of throws a wrench into it. So sometimes they're not that loyal to that, but who gives a fuck? So they go in to record one of the most iconic death metal albums of all time, Altars of Madness.
Over the past few years, death metal seems to have grown quite a bit. It started with, I think, heavier music in general has really gotten a kick. I think people are getting bored with one thing and moving on to the next. A few years ago, thrash was really big, and you know, if 10 years ago someone would have said Metallica's going to be on a major label and they're going to sell millions of records, everybody would have said, "Wow, you know, what a joke." But it's happened. Slayer is now very big. They're selling lots and lots of records. I think death metal is coming of age. A lot of people are starting to realize that it is a very marketable item. Whether that's good or bad is yet to be seen. But I think with all the support that the fans have given, there's no stopping.
Altars of Madness, classic. It sounds amazingly disgusting. The reverb is on top form. But I gotta be honest with you guys, I think this album's a little overrated in the sense that although every song on it's fantastic, and although I think it's a flawless album, it's the same issue I have with Sound of Perseverance. Now a lot of you are being like, what the fuck? Sound of Perseverance sucks balls. That's like Brokeback Mountain, but not good. You know, you want your David Vincent cowboy butt sex, not Chuck Schuldiner and his human lineup, you know, Paul Masvidal and Sean Reinhart shoving butt plugs, and it's just reamers. No, we want our David Vincent, right? The issue is that it doesn't represent the discography, although it's the most popular album, kind of like Sound of Perseverance is the most popular death album, but it doesn't represent the discography at all. The riffs are more thrashy than they are death metal. The drumming, although awesome, isn't as blasty and as ridiculous. And the vocals aren't that much death metal, it's kind of but all in all, it's still a great album. But my biggest issue with not setting the trend is that they don't have any like doomy songs, which is always my favorite songs from the band. So they eventually started doing that shit, but nothing really slows down. So a lot of it just kind of runs together, which is an issue I have with death metal albums. So you just kind of throw it in the same realm as Pestilence and all that shit. Although it's fantastic and it's unique for the rest of Morbid Angel's discography, that's the problem. Its biggest strength is also its problem. Although it's unique when listening to all their albums, like this one's different than their other ones. It's not that different from everything else going on at the time. Whereas the stuff they did after is like, holy shit, this is fucking groundbreaking, just like, you know, David Vincent's asshole breaking when he's having cowboy butt sex in the mountains. Performances are on just fucking astounding, artwork astounding, the sound is creepy as fuck, and you have amazing songs on here, although some of them kind of run together like typical death metal. You have Maze of Torment, which is fucking ridiculous. You have Chapel of Ghouls, which has like one of the most awesome middle sections where it's like really creepy and you hear like haunting sounds and shit. Then you also have ridiculous songs like Lords of Fever and Plague and Immortal Rites that are just fucking pretty death metal, actually. Just absolutely ridiculous. Then you have some of my favorite songs on here. Visions from the Dark Side, which totally has a thrashy edge to it. But showing that this album isn't completely, fully death metal yet, although I overall consider it a death metal album, I still think that it's not fully the Morbid Angel sound yet. But this song kicks ass, probably one of my favorites. And you also have Evil Spells, which rules. Fantastic closing song. But then you have the motherfucking Damnation. Song that's riffs are catchy, epic, and badass. I would be consensual to David Vincent raping my asshole if I could keep listening to the song till the end of time. It is pure bliss. Every part of this fucking song right here. You fuck this video, go listen to Damnation right now. Don't make me beat the fuck out of it. Although the album's classic and it's set, the seeds, they've been planted, they're growing, but the seeds have only been planted on this album. They gotta start growing. And bitch, do they start fucking growing on the next album, because Blessed Are the Sick.
Like I said, times are getting much more aggressive. We're very aggressive, and we're right there leading it into the future. I think it's a very strong form of music, and I don't think that you're going to see it going anywhere anytime soon, other than continuing to get more brutal and continuing momentum. Just kind of like a tidal wave. You know, you can't ever stop a tidal wave. It just keeps coming and coming. Bow down before the master and pray that if you have gone door where wrong is near us, blind means of chaos.
With this album, you got more religious type of stuff going on. Blessed Are the Sick, referring to like Bible verse and shit, you know. Now the album cover, what the fuck is that? I just gotta ask. It looks awesome, but all this time I still can't figure out what the fuck the thing is supposed to be. It looks like Pete Sandoval's drum set after he ass blasted it. But although everyone sucks the balls at his Altars of Madness, it's time for some truths here, okay? People are gonna already be mad that I said Altars of Madness isn't the best, it doesn't represent them. But it's like telling your kid that Santa Claus doesn't exist. They're just gonna be crying, and you know, they can't handle the truth. You know, they're gonna complain that Altars of Madness is the best album, but they're telling themselves lies, ladies and gentlemen. It's the truth. I know everything. This album, Blessed Are the Sick, is the quintessential, not necessarily my favorite or the best, but the quintessential album for the band that really started them on their path to awesomeness. The first 90s death metal album from them. It sounds like 90s death metal. It has the Scott Burns sound to it. It sounds really fucking thin and muddy, but you know, that's the beauty of 90s death metal, I guess.
Morris Sound Studios has gotten quite a reputation for being like the death metal thing to do. Bands from all over the place flew into Tampa and wanted to work at Morris Sound Studios because it was like the death metal studio. I don't know how they ever got that reputation, possibly because we recorded there.
But what else it has is, of course, the consistency with the riffs. Everything sounds disgusting and sludgy. David Vincent's voice sounds morbid.
First and foremost, I was a smoker during Altars, and that went away after I went on my first tour and realized I was just on stage. So getting that out of the way, my vocals got a little deeper, they got a little stronger, and boy was I happy about that, because it really, you know, I was started to be able to do more of the things that I wanted to do, and not be hindered by physical limitations.
They have some doomy sections on this fucking album. And Pete Sandoval's drumming is goddamn ridiculous. Right off the bat, though, it gives off some confusing messages. A lot of the songs on here are actually not actual songs. You have some weird instrumental tracks, which they start doing a lot on later albums, too, where they just throw little 1-minute instrumentals that add nothing to the album, but they don't take away anything, of course. But then you get a song that has a slow riff. You're like, what the fuck's going on? And then, of course, it gets crazy. But what leads me to confusion is a lot of people try to say this album is somehow fucking death doom. Are you fucking retarded? Although I love my Morbid Angel to be doomy and slow and dark, there's only a few songs on this album that actually even follow that format. One of them being the first half of Day of Suffering, which is only like 2 minutes anyways, and then it's the title track, which both songs are amazing, but that doesn't make the album death doom, you fucking idiots. But the title track, that is like one of the best songs off the album. It's fantastic. It is like their first front to back doomy song that really, really always represents like some of my favorite material from them. But they do mess around a lot with tempos on here. So you have the doomy shit. You also have a more mid-tempo song with Rebel Lands, which fucking rules. And then you have my favorite songs actually being the fast ones on this album, which never fucking happens with Morbid Angel, but it's all towards the end of the album. You have just a run of awesome songs. Unholy Blasphemies fucking rules. Abominations fucking rules. And that was like my favorite song when I'm listening to this. I'm like, God damn, this one really stands out. Abominations. And then I hear the ancient ones. I'm like, that's the best Morbid Angel song ever. Best fast one for sure. I can tell you that right now. Ancient One's the best fast Morbid Angel song for sure. Now, I can't ever decide what I think is the best Wranglem Tanglem Cowboy Buttsex David Vincent era death metal spaghetti western album, but I can tell you that it's a tie between two albums. It is Blessed of the Sick and the next one, Covenant. Now, Covenant is important because it is like the highest selling death metal album ever at that point. And this album truly represents the band once again. In an even further way, you have better production.
Well, what we've done, we've managed to get ourselves a really good distribution network with the major label. We've never had that in the past. So that kind of allows us to get our greasy little fingers in more stores than we were in the past. But nothing's changed with the music. If anything, it's gotten worse. It's going to continue to get that way.
Right. More focus on tempos and slowing down and shit like that. And you have more classic songs in here. I don't know which one I like better, Blessed of the Sick or this one, because both of them have such amazing songs. But I kind of give the edge to Covenant because it was more classic. Although Blessed of the Sick was first, it's still the more highest selling album, you know? And it has some of their most classic fucking songs on it. And the production, I think, sounds good. A lot of people complain about it. I don't fucking get it. You're going to not complain about the muddy Blessed of the Sick, but you're going to complain about this? Get the fuck out of here. And anyone that complains about production and death metal, unless it's like painful to listen to, you're a fucking idiot. Now the track listing on this is just prolific. Rapture, which is crazy. The riff style is so Morbid Angel with how ridiculous and almost off time it sounds, but it's so geniusly on time. It's not dissonant to the point of annoyance. You could tell they actually wrote a real riff, then added off time, weird progressive shit to it. And although it sounds a bit like a mess on first listen, you actually kind of listen to it a little bit and you're like, wow, Pete Sandoval and of course our Trey Asperger's, or whatever his name is, are actually making a song that sounds like it's not cohesive but actually is, basically. And then you have amazing songs, Pain Divine, Vengeance is Mine, Lion's Den, but some of the more interesting ones are the doomy songs, like of course World of Shit, Promised Land, which does get faster. And you have a really badass song on here that was actually from Abominations of Desolation. You can tell that it's from that era because you have a really olden thrash vibe to it that sounds more like Celtic Frost than it does death metal, so it sounds really off on this album. But I'd argue it's maybe the coolest, most badass song on the album. It has a really bizarre, dreamy middle section. It's like, what the fuck is this? And then you have a really awesome closing song, of course, God of Emptiness. It's on the Head of Music video, a song that Beavis and Butthead even made fun of.
Whoa. Was that a bear? Yeah, I think so.
You know, oh, to me faithfully. But it shows off David Vincent doing some really creative, different shit. Of course, you know, his, you know. But then you gotta have his, voice that he kind of starts doing a lot on the next album. But it's really cool. No one else is doing that shit.
Bow to me faithfully, bow to me splendidly, bow to me faithfully, bow to me splendidly.
David Vincent, maybe racist or anti-Semitic or whatever. Who cares? What we know is that this boy was innovating, doing cool, creative shit that still fit in the realms of death metal. Although people will try to say this song's fucking stupid, I say you're fucking stupid. And I'll prove you wrong, alright?
Which are the difference between this new one and the Last Covenant?
Well, I'd have to say that the production on the new CD is much stronger, and I think by and large the songwriting too has evolved to a new stage where it even includes more of a broader spectrum than we've ever had before, which is, you know, adding that next dimension to Morbid Angel.
Then we have Domination, which is the last album with David Vincent, the Wrangler and the Tangler, and it's an awesome one, although everyone hates it for some fucking reason. The sound is weird. It kind of has that modern death metal sound with the guitars where it's like overly loud.
He was really into the industrial stuff. The sound of Domination is so sterile, it pisses me off. The drums are too sampled. There's a metronome, and the timings are too perfect, and it misses the living feel.
But other than that, I think it sounds pretty cool, and it sounds disgusting. I fucking love the sound of it other than that loud guitar, and the songwriting on it's fantastic. But apparently there was a lot of fighting with this album, but it's never really clear whether Trey is just retconning the fact that he defended an album, and then he says because there's a bunch of backlash, oh, it was actually me fighting with David Vincent, because this shit happens all the time with this band, you know, because Trey was defending this album until he kicked David Vincent out. Then because of all the backlash, Trey was like, oh, I always hated this album and hated the way it was made, hated the sound of it, and hated David Vincent, and followed them all the time. And the same thing happened with Illud, Divinum, Insanus. He defended that shit. So you better make up your fucking mind, boy. But regardless of all the infighting and all the critical bashing of it and the weird sound of it, still awesome from beginning to end. Dominate. Classic fucking awesome goddamn song. Eyes to see, ears to hear. He's showing off that Oh, eyes to see voice, you know, that he was doing on God of Emptiness.
What the honesty that the voice of the elder skies. The blind they wither away. You fools, these eyes are never for you.
Some of my absolute favorite, maybe even my two favorite Doomy songs from them, you of course have Caesar's Palace, which fucking rules, tells the story of Rome and shit like that, but people try to claim it has something to do with Nazis or some dumb fucking shit. But then you have the song, another one that people accuse of being an anti-Semite for, Where the Slime Blood. People claim that that's about Jews. But who cares, because it is probably the greatest Doomy song that they've ever written. It fucking rules, it reeks, and is completely unique. Awesome fucking death doom.
We want to do green slime, we'll do a slime pack edition of the record. All of the manufacturing plants in the UK are like, nope, we do no longer do those, we won't touch it. We call the guy up, we want to do a slime pack. He's like, okay, let me send you some samples. So he sends a couple of samples over and we get them, and sure enough, it's like the kids' toy slime in a sealed pack. And we're like, oh my God, this is amazing. And we're all playing with them on our desks and we're like, this is the one, we're gonna use it. And we had the packs printed in America and shipped to a CD pressing plant in the UK so that the workers could put them all together and send them out to the shops or whatever. The workers at the CD pressing plant in the UK refused to touch the slime packs. And it's like, why? It's slime. You're like, kids, it's a kid's toy. Sure enough, toddlers put it in their mouth and chewed on it as kids or whatever. It's fine, tell them to toughen up and get on with it and all this sort of thing. To show his workers, he'd picked up a box full of the packs and was kind of leaking, and he'd held it against his sweater and said, look everyone, that's perfectly safe, and moved it across the room. He said the next day it was like the film Aliens. It had eaten away the sweater. Like it was like holes in it and that. And so of course the staff are completely freaked out. We're like, wow, whatever, get on with it and all this. Next thing you know, the fax machine, because that's what we had back then, starts whirring. And this guy's sending through this 8-page disclaimer, and it goes, warning, do not touch the slime or whatever. Slime could cause redness to skin, headaches, and it went on for 8 pages, and the final page is, ingestion could cause death. And what had happened was, to save money on a custom shipment of 20,000, use like the kiddie slime, it's going to be X amount of dollars, but if you substitute it for a cheaper, more toxic product, you could save himself another couple of grand in the deal or whatever. So the guy had put a more toxic slime in, so we had to dump them all. We had to get a hazardous waste guy come in and remove them all. But I believe at some point maybe Dig had saved like 5 or 10, so 5 or 10 exist somewhere in the world.
David Vincent got his ass wrangled out of the band, which brings us to the Steve Buttfucker era, which I love both eras, okay? I'm not gonna sit here and pick sides, but I'll tell you how I feel here, okay? Although I appreciate and love, as you heard, those David Vincent era albums, my favorite Morbid Angel albums are actually the first two in the Steve Buttfucker era. I'll get to why, but here's the thing, with all these people fighting about who the fuck is better, what era is better, and whatnot, what we can say for sure is that David Vincent was the more unique vocalist, because Steven Buttfucker just kind of sounds like that typical death growl that stuff like Corpse Grinder Fisher does, where you have David Vincent that sounds weirder. It's going to be a little harder to get into, maybe, if you're more used to stuff like Steve Buttfucker. But once you get into him, you realize you're homosexual, but you also realize that you're a cowboy, but you also realize that he's very unique for the realms of death metal. So he did bring an interesting flavor to the band, and I cannot deny that. But I would say that even if David Vincent were on these two albums, these two Steve Buttfucker albums, the first two, they would still be my favorite Morbid Angel albums, because Trey motherfucking brought it. on the first one and the second one. We're going to talk about the first one first, of course, because why would we talk about the second one first? That'd just be fucking retarded. Although I am fucking retarded, I don't got time for that shit. So we're going to go into Formulas Fatal, The Flesh. Funny thing about this album, not only does it start with the F, you know, continuing the fucking alphabet soup bullshit, we also have Formulas Fatal to the Flesh, 3 Fs. Letter F is the 6th word of the alphabet, so it's like 666. Woo! And the album cover, although I used to think it looked fucking retarded, now I think it looks awesome. I think it has one of their best productions as well. It sounds really good. It doesn't sound overly loud and modern, and it really manages the blast beats and the ridiculous riffing together. It just sounds really well mixed. My only complaint is a total nitpick, and that's the fact that, like Blessed of the Sick, it's laced with a bunch of songs that are little 1-minute instrumentals that kind of do nothing, so it becomes annoying, but it doesn't hurt or ruin anything. But it doesn't really make anything better, though. It's just a little annoying. You just got to hit the skip button a few more fucking times. You have Heaving Earth, fucking ridiculously fast, and the Doomy section in the middle, awesome. And I love how, although you have your Doomy song on here, Nothing Is Not, which is one of their best Doomy songs, every fucking step of it is just slimy and badass and really groovy, actually. But you have songs on here like Heaving Earth, Covenant of Death, and a few others that actually have cool tempo changes and like doomy sections or beautiful dreamy sections and shit like that. They really add diversity with each song. It has some of my favorite goddamn fast songs in here. Sag is fan-fucking-tastic, and I really love Chamber of Dis, that ridiculous riff they play at the beginning that sounds really spooky and scary that's repeated throughout. It's like one of my favorite Morbid Angel sections ever. God, I could just go on all day about this fucking album and all the goddamn songs on it. Hellspawn, which was from Abominations of Desolation, fantastic. It's ridiculously blistering, fucking fast blasturbation, better than it was ever recorded before. And then you have the most unique song on here, Invocation of the Continual One, which was, I believe, actually developed during the Abominations of Desolation era as well. This song is an epic, and I mean fucking epic. Almost 10 minutes. The riffs are ridiculous. They're actually kind of proggy. It's super different. The middle section and towards the end of the song has really cool doomy and dreamy sections. All the changes feel extremely natural, and when I was listening to it, I felt like I was listening to a 5-minute song. It just blew by in time in a great way. I was like, God damn, it's over already? That shit was like almost 10 minutes. And then you have a few songs that kind of, you know, end the album, but a lot of those little 1-minute songs actually do add a lot of creepy apocalyptic atmosphere, because the whole point of this album is it's almost like a sort of thematic concept about like the apocalypse and shit, and that's why I really, really do love this album. Not only are the songs fantastic, the performances are fantastic, they do some different things on here, but it almost feels like it's all interwoven together. It all feels like it has the same theme to it. I didn't get the album at first. It was one of my least favorites for a while. Still liked it, but just didn't get it. But I guarantee you, if you keep listening to this one and the next one, you will find something interesting. In fact, a lot of people make the mistake of recommending Altars of Madness as their, the album to get into Morbid Angel. But if you're already kind of into death metal and you want to know what Morbid Angel is about, something like Altars of Madness is not really the way to go, because it's not representative of the rest of their shit. In fact, I'm going to make a bold claim here, and I say, if you want to get into Morbid Angel, check out Formulas Fatal to the Flesh. Guarantee you that it will be the gateway drug to the rest of the band's discography. But let's move on to an album that I argue might even be better than this one. They change it up even more. You know how I said almost always my favorite Morbid Angel songs are always the doomy ones? Well, they make an album catered to retards like me. We are, of course, talking about Gateways to Annihilation. This one not only focuses on being very change the tempos, have some doomy sections, have some more mid-tempo songs, ridiculous fast songs and shit like that, but they also have a really fantastic heavy sound to it. In fact, this might be their best production ever. It sounds perfectly mixed where everything sounds heavy, but it doesn't have that horrible modern loud sound to it. It just sounds sleek in a death metal style. Not like overly produced sleek, but I mean like the guitars sleek and slimy and shit like that. Well, we get tastes of so many awesome tempos and stuff like that that it actually causes a lot of these songs, maybe if the riffs weren't as that good, they're more memorable now. You have 3 doomy songs in here, 3 ridiculously fast songs, and 3 mid-tempo catchy songs. All of them are fantastic. And the album starts with a little instrumental thing, but the instrumental stuff is kind of put down a little bit. You only get 2 of them on here, but it starts out with some weird frogs and fucking bayou sounds. You're like, what the hell is this? Ain't no Cajun, motherfucker. But this album drops you in the atmosphere of Florida, where they're all from. It drops you in the bayou with all the crocodiles and all the cowboy butt sex you could ever want. Summoning Redemption, an epic and it's doomy, just right off the bat sets the tone for the album. It's going to be different than what you've heard before, because every album starts out with something fast, right? Maybe Blessed the Sick kind of tricked you, then got fast. This one, slow the entire time. And it kind of keeps it a slow and then medium, then slow tempo with these really catchy, badass songs. You have, of course, Ageless Still I Am, He Who Sleeps, but then you hit To the Victor Go the Spoils. And boy, do they fucking do, because that's the fast one, the first one of the 3, and it blows you away. One of their best fast songs ever. It makes it extra sweet to get to the fast stuff, whereas in most death metal albums, it's just fast song, fast song, fast song, It gets fucking old after a while. Another fast one is Opening of the Gates, and that one has some ridiculous riffs to it that sounds like some sort of vortex or some crazy shit. Secured Limitations is a really catchy, more mid-tempo one, which has some more raspy vocals, almost like it's like a Carcass song. And that is our boy Trey Asperger's doing those vocals in there, along with, of course, Steve Buttfucker.
You created this thing you called sin. Oh God, create this machine. Through the pain and denial was free.
You have other fantastic ones on here, but maybe my favorite, and although I always say the slow songs are my favorite, in fact, it might be a slow song this album for my favorite, but I want to say maybe for the fast songs, all right? Let's talk about the fast songs. Favorite of the 3, it's got to be the last one, God of the Forsaken, because they really deliver you with the fast ending. They're like, we know we've given you some Death Doomy stuff, and maybe you don't like Death Doom, but we're going to pay it off by having the most ridiculous, most fucking evil sounding song they've ever written. Now, although I've been slurping the cock of the first 2 Steve Tucker albums, just, you know, we gotta go into Heretic. I love Heretic, every song on it's awesome, but boy, do the fucking instrumental songs just start getting really fucking annoying on this one. Like, more than half the tracks in here are instrumentals, especially like that line of songs that pretty much are the second half of the fucking album are all just horrible instrumental tracks that add nothing. In fact, they get annoying on this album because I have to keep fucking spamming the goddamn skip button through the fuckers just to hear a little drum sound, boring. Little guitar sound, boring. What is the point of all this shit? It just sounds like a bunch of stupid fucking around the studio wasting time. You could have wrote more than 8 songs with all this time you're wasting on all this dumb shit. The production sounds very fucking weird. Something's wrong. I don't know how to explain it, but everyone that's heard it has heard it like immediately off the bat. The first song, you're like, what the fuck's up with the production? It doesn't ruin it, but it does sound very weird for death metal. You do have some really good classic songs on here. Enshrined by Grace has an awesome music video to it. Beneath the Hollow rules. Curse the Flesh, good. But my favorite is actually kind of a more underrated one. Stricken Arise is really cool. It has this really badass riff to it. That's enough about Heretic. I don't think it's as good, but it's still good. Then David Vincent comes back, makes his illustrious return, and they start talking about this new album they're working on. After all these tours, all these years, they're finally making a new album, The Return of David Vincent, Morbid Angel. It's going to be fantastic. It's going to be cowboy butt sex for your ears. It's going to be, instead of watching the movie Brokeback Mountain, you're going to hear Brokeback Mountain. Then we get Illud Divinum Insanus.
We have a commitment that we made not only to ourselves but to the fans, that we are always going to, number one, stay true to what we are, number two, be as honest as we can about our creativity, and never sell out.
Although Pete Sandoval's on this album, which makes me mad, the guy that gets to replace him makes it sound like Pete Sandoval is still in the band. And Pete Sandoval would never return because he became a born-again Christian, but who cares? He made the mark he wanted to make, and the guys that keep getting to replace him sound just like him. I don't care too much, as long as the songs are good. I don't give a fuck about lineup as long as the songs are good. But the issue here is that they focus on having some kind of typical Morbid Angel songs, like Nevermore and stuff like that. That's actually pretty good. But then you have a bunch of bizarre songs you could tell David Wrangle Tangle Cowboy Buttsex Vincent wrote with his stupid sideburns. Stuff like Too Extreme, which sounds like it would have been a good death metal song if it didn't have the weird beats behind it that ruin the entire song. And you have Destructors Marching, which is fucking hilariously bad. A couple others on there that are really bizarre. Too Morbid, which I actually kind of like that one, I'm not gonna lie. It's a groove metal song. Or not Too Morbid, it's I Am Morbid. Too Extreme is, I was mixing up the fucking song titles there, okay? I'm gonna play devil's advocate and defend some of this album here. Although the song's cheesy and everyone makes fun of it and it's stupid, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of get down to Radical. Kill the cop, kill the cop, kill the cop, radical. Then half the album is actually pretty good death metal. You have stuff like Nevermore, like I already said, that's a pretty damn good song.
I'm graced with understanding, my gifts are all demanding, collecting all the souls once led astray.
Blades for Ball, I like. Existo Volgor. I think about half the album is pretty tolerable stuff. And I think that everyone overhates it a little bit. It's not good, for sure. Weird. Weird to say the least. This whole album, it mixes death metal with fucking, you know, industrial stuff. We want real David Vincent death metal. Cowboy and Indians death metal. But the good news is that Trey eventually wised up and stopped defending this abysmal album and actually got back with Steve Buttfucker. And they went to release a real death metal album eventually. About 20 years ago, it was a classic, and I was there when it came out. It is a modern death metal classic called Kingdoms of Disdained. The hat's fallen, the cat's out of the bag. Kingdom of Disdained comes out, and it's actually a really good album. Still has a few issues with it, but it's still really good. The production sounds really dark. It's probably their heaviest, darkest album they've ever done. They mess a lot with the tempos. The album cover's cool again. It feels like good old Morbid Angel. It's not talking about weird lyrical shit, you know, that they were doing kind of on Domination and more of it on the last album. They were doing some weird new metal type of jump the fuck up stuff, but now they're doing real death metal. But I gotta say, there's still a song on here I really can't get behind, to be honest with you. The song Declaring New Law, Secret Hell is bad. It's like Illud Divinum, my anus bad. But the rest of it's awesome. Messing with tempos on Dead, then it gets faster and ridiculous. Just, the whole thing's really consistent and awesome. But my favorite song, the cesspool of disgusting death metal, has to be For No Master. That one is really awesome. That has got to be one of the best songs they have done in years. In years! But although the album is fantastic, we're all going to sit and wait, and hopefully Morbid Angel can continue. Maybe someday they can get back with David Vincent and wrangle his ass back in, but David Vincent just seems like he causes too many problems for everyone. So if they can continue on with Steve Buttfucker and it'll work, then good. Hopefully they can make more awesome albums. What I want to see the comeback of is my boy Pete Sandoval, so we can ass blast those fucking drums. But although their last album was awesome, I really want them to do something a little bit different again. Not in a bad way like Illud Divinum, my anus, but they do need a bit of innovation. Although the album was dark and although it was heavy, it felt like it had the Heretic effect where it was kind of more the same. I want them to do another album that's unique like Gateways, or at least really, really good, memorable, like, you know, formulas or the early David Vincent shit. But that is it. That is Morbid Angel, and that is why Morbid Angel is one of the best death metal bands of all mother-tucking time.
Subscribe to the Downfall Network.